Today we are finally going to get the entire list of subject pronouns in German. We've already talked about a few of them, but now we're going to explain them in more detail. If you stick around to the very end of this video, I will blow your mind with a fact that no one else will tell you about the pronoun that you think is the formal version of you in German. In the du versus ihr versus sie video, I introduced you to the 3 ways to say you in German. In the next video, I showed you how to use the pronoun ich, which means I in English, as well as a few more examples with the pronoun sie. 2 videos later, I showed you the pronouns er, which means he, and sie, which means she. In order for me to introduce these pronouns properly, I'm going to rearrange things just a bit. The full list of German subject pronouns looks like this. Ich means I. Du is you singular familiar or informal. Er means he or the masculine it. Sie means she or the feminine it. Es is it and is neuter. Wir means we. Ihr is you, but this time plural and familiar or informal. Sie means they. And the last sie means you, which is singular or plural, and it's infamiliar or formal. Don't get confused about the fact that I labeled sie as singular or plural. It isn't ambiguous. It's not like it could be either or and you don't know which one it is. What I mean by this is that this pronoun can be used to address one person, haben Sie Kinder, Herr Meier? Do you have children, Mr. Meyer? Or to address more than one person, haben Sie Kinder, Herr und Frau Meier? Do you have children, Mr. and Mrs. Meyer? Ich is the first pronoun on most pronoun charts and lists. It simply means I in English and is used exactly like you would expect it to be. It is one of 2 first-person pronouns. I briefly mentioned the idea of first person, second person, and third person in my video about du, ihr, and sie. In case you're forgotten, the first person is used when the speaker is the subject. In German, there are 2 of these pronouns. Ich is what we call the first person singular. It means I. Wir is the first person plural. Wir is the German version of we. It's used exactly as it is in English. If you and another person or more are referred to with a single pronoun, you use wir. Mein Bruder und ich. My brother and I. Wir. Dieser Mann da drüben und ich. That guy over there and I. Wir. You get the idea. There are 3 second-person pronouns in German. All of these translate as you in English. Du and ihr are used with people with whom you are familiar. This includes family members and friends, but also children, even if they're not your own, and pets or just animals in general. Du is used to address one person, and ihr is used to address more than one person. Sie is used with people that you don't know well, or people of authority. This one again could be singular if you're addressing one person, or plural if you're addressing multiple. I already did an in-depth video about the difference between du, ihr, and sie, so if you want more details about these pronouns, I've linked that video in that thing that pops up in the corner over there. There are 3 third-person singular pronouns in German. We have the same thing in English, but they're used slightly differently. In German we have er, sie, and es, but in English we have he, she, and it. This sounds simple enough on the surface. If you're talking about a masculine person or animal, you use er, he. Der Mann, the man, er, he. When you're talking about a feminine person or animal, you use sie, she. Die Frau, the woman, sie, she. If you're talking about a thing that doesn't have an intrinsic gender, you use es. Das Fenster, the window, es, it. The problem when you use the pronouns er and sie is that they don't always mean he and she. Any noun in German that takes the masculine article der will use the subject pronoun er, and any noun that uses the feminine article die will use sie. If the noun uses the neuter article das, the pronoun will be es. Since I haven't mentioned this concept in any other videos yet, now is a good time to explain the concept of noun genders. Every noun in German is assigned a grammatical gender. This gender is sometimes assigned based on the intrinsic gender of the person or animal to which it refers, as the examples I showed you earlier did. However, it becomes much more random when we start talking about non-living objects. For instance, der Löffel is a spoon and is masculine, while die Gabel is a fork and is feminine, and das Messer is a knife and is neuter. What's even more confusing to beginners is the noun Mädchen in German translates as girl in English, which clearly has an intrinsic gender associated with it, but the noun's gender is neuter, das Mädchen. The German word for a mannequin is Männchen, and despite having the word Mann in it, which means man, this noun is neuter, das Männchen. While on the surface these nouns being neuter seems random, it's actually because of the suffix hien, which forces the noun to take the neuter gender. There are other rules and patterns that are helpful when identifying the gender of a German noun, but as a beginner this will likely seem random. I have a few videos with tips on figuring this out which go into a lot more depth than I can in this video. You can find those linked in the description. For now, stick to memorizing the gender of each noun as you learn it so you don't mix this up. Trust me, it will be a lot better off if you learn the genders of each noun now so you can prevent a myriad of other issues you could cause by not knowing them. For now, stick to knowing that if the noun you are replacing uses the article der, use er as the pronoun. For nouns using the article die, use sie, and for nouns using the article das, use es. There is also the pronoun man, which usually isn't included on lists and charts like this one, but it is incredibly helpful to know. This pronoun can be translated in several ways in English. It can mean they, one, or the ambiguous you. This pronoun can be used in sentences like this one. One does not simply walk into Mordor. Or, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Or basically any sentence that starts with they say. The pronoun man acts like er or sie, but without the need to pay attention to biological gender. You can also address people with der or die instead of using er or sie. If you use the article der or die instead of using the respective pronouns er and sie, you are expressing a distance between you and the person to whom you are referring with that word. For example, das ist Sascha, sie ist meine Freundin. This is Sasha, she is my girlfriend. Versus, das ist Sascha, die kommt aus Frankfurt. This is Sasha, this person comes from Frankfurt. The only other pronoun on the list that I haven't talked about today is the third person plural. This is basically a plural version of er, sie, and es, or in English we would just say they. If you aren't talking directly to a group of people or things, but instead are talking about them, you use the pronoun sie in German. Now I know what you're thinking, there are 3 z's on this chart. I get it, that can get really confusing, but there are ways to tell them apart most of the time. Conjugation is one of those ways, which is what I'll get to in the next grammar lesson. Before I sign off from this video, I want to mention one little side note about the formal you pronoun sie and the third person plural pronoun sie. The pronoun that is now used as the formal you in German is actually derived from the third person plural sie, which is they in English. This comes from the idea that if you were to show someone respect back in the olden days, you shouldn't address them directly at all, which means that sie is less a formal version of you than a capitalized version of they. This also explains the reason why sie and sie are always the same on these charts, and they always take the same form of the verb. In the next video, I'll show you how to make your verb match the subject of your sentence. In the meantime, das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!